What's going on, everyone? Welcome into the Cleveland Browns Report. Coming up on today's show, we're talking blockbuster trades, baby. 5 trades the Browns could make that would definitely be a move to swing for the fences before the NFL trade deadline going into their bye week. So trade idea number 1. The Browns receive Jerry Jeudy from the Denver Broncos in exchange for a 2024 second-round draft pick. That second-round pick might be a bit on the higher side, but I remember back in the offseason, Denver wanted a first, so maybe with Jeudy not starting off super hot, they could get him for a second. But some background here on Jeudy before I give you my opinion on this. He was the 15th overall pick in the 2020 NFL Draft coming out of Alabama by Denver. Denver also picked up his 5th-year option, which means he's under contract for this year and next year at $12.9 million, just like Jed Wills. In his career, 168 receptions, 2,400 yards, and 9 touchdowns through, 3 seasons and some change now in 2023. There was a rumor back in the offseason that the Browns were very interested in Jerry Jeudy, but the asking price was too high. Denver wanted a first. Cleveland didn't have a first, so Denver wanted a second and a player. And Cleveland, whoever that player was, I guess they were too attached to. It was no David Putney, and they refused to move on from that. So they opted to go the Elijah Moore route instead. Well, maybe now that the Browns might have to give up a player, they could circle back to the Jerry Jeudy trade. Mary Kay recently had a mailbag where she was asked about trading for Jerry Jeudy, and I think you guys might find this quote interesting. I believe the Browns will get to the bye week and begin to determine if they need another Pro Bowl caliber receiver to the roster. If so, I think Jeudy could land on their radar again because he's been there before as recently as March before they traded for Elijah Moore. I think they'd be more inclined to trade for Jeudy, who's 24, than Davante Adams, who's 30. Compare Jerry Jeudy to the Browns wide receiver room. I mean, he's not lighting the world on fire. And I don't think this is one of those cases where you go, well, that's just because Denver's offense sucks and Russell Wilson's bad. Russell Wilson's quietly having a good year. I think this is more of Jerry Jeudy is just not looking like a true wide receiver 1. I might be jumping the gun there. He did have a hamstring injury that kept him out the first week of the year and sort of slowed him down out of the gate, so he could ramp up later on once he gets healthy. But if we know one thing about Andrew Berry, it is Andrew Berry is the Flex Seal of NFL GMs. You know what I mean? If the Browns have any roster hole whatsoever, Andrew Berry, draft picks, slap it on, baby, because he will do whatever it takes to get this team to where it wants to go. He has no problem doing his job and not sitting on his hands and making moves if a roster hole pops up. So, speaking of that, if a trade happens, you'll want a video. So make sure to subscribe to the channel. Don't miss a single thing when you hit the sub button down below. We're going to break down all Cleveland Browns news and rumors throughout the entire season. Now, as for trading for Jerry Jeudy, I'd definitely be open to it, but I just don't think the Browns are willing to give up a second-round pick for Jeudy. I don't think he has looked like a player worthy of a second-round pick. So if they can get him for less, I'm game. If it costs a second, not having a first and second-round pick next draft, that scares me a lot. I'm not going to lie. All right, moving on to the second trade idea. The Browns get Jonathan Taylor, and the Colts get a third-round pick this upcoming draft and a third-round pick in next year's draft. I know Indianapolis would probably want a first, and if they don't get a first, they definitely want a second, but maybe they're not going to find either of those things, and a pair of thirds is the best they're going to get, right? I would not recommend going all in with pocket threes, but maybe for the Browns, this could be a hand that gets them back out onto the top, on top of the ground game for the NFL. So, Jonathan Taylor, he is able to be activated off the PUP list and play as soon as this week, right? When you go on the PUP list to start the year, you're out the first 4 weeks, no matter what, on any team, with any team. And so now that we are entering week 5, he could suit up and play this upcoming Sunday. Now, as I'm filming this during our live show on Tuesday, head coach Shane Steichen said they expect him to return to practice this week. We'll see whether or not that means he's going to play on Sunday for the Colts. But he was placed on IR back in December of 2022 with an ankle injury, came into camp wanting a new contract. He also complained about an ankle, like just a nagging injury, and ultimately the contract issues kind of froze him, and then they put him on the PUP list to just put a pin in it altogether. But Jonathan Taylor, we know what a special running back he is when he's on his A game. He led the NFL in rushing just 2 years ago, 1,800 yards and 18 touchdowns. Of course, it goes without saying, this would be a ginormous improvement from the Browns' current running back duo. I mean, no offense to Jerome Ford and Kareem Hunt, but we've been through 2 weeks of these two guys playing together, and it hasn't been awesome. Like Jerome Ford and Kareem Hunt the last 2 weeks, just the last 2 weeks, they're averaging less than 3 yards a carry. You just have not seen that spark from the ground game. It's not all on them. I'm sure there can be improvements on the offensive line side of things, but the vision, the burst, the elusiveness, that has been sorely missed from Nick Chubb. And these guys, they're just not doing a good enough job to replace even 90% or 80% of what Nick Chubb brings. Now, this is an awkward subject because if you go for Jonathan Taylor, one would think you're probably going to extend him, and then that's the situation. Nick Chubb is done in Cleveland. He has no guaranteed money left on the last year of his contract. This would be a gut punch to Nick Chubb, I think even the locker room a little bit, and the fan base moving on from Chubb so quickly and replacing him. Like, it'd be tough to stomach, but it's a business. And if you take the emotion out of it for a moment and look at it from an outsider's perspective, adding Jonathan Taylor to this running back room, you kind of pick up where you left off, at least as close as you possibly could to when you had Nick Chubb in the backfield. So maybe Andrew Berry decides to take the emotion out of it and try and get this ground game back on track with Jonathan Taylor. Now, today's Cleveland Browns report is sponsored by GameTime. You shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event. GameTime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. If you're trying to catch an upcoming Browns game, or you want to see a Cavs game, a concert, or another sporting event in your area, GameTime is the place to visit first. Now, what I love about GameTime is how you can get last-minute tickets for the lowest price. There is nothing better than when all the guys get together and like, let's go see the Browns on Sunday, or let's go see them on Monday Night Football. And then that idea comes crashing down to earth when you go and see how expensive tickets are. Well, thanks to GameTime, they're obsessed with finding ways to help you save money on tickets. GameTime has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event and even an hour after it starts. It's the place to find last-minute seats. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code BROWNSCHAT for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but once again, create an account and redeem code BROWNSCHAT for $20 off. Download GameTime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. On to our third blockbuster trade idea. What about Derrick Henry coming up from Nashville for just 1 third-round pick? The Jonathan Taylor one, to put a wrap on it, I got to wait and see how the next few weeks pan out before I decide whether or not the Browns should do that. But if I got a notification the Browns traded for Jonathan Taylor, tell me you wouldn't be excited about that. Now, as for Derrick Henry, he's in a different spot in his career compared to Jonathan Taylor. He's on the last year of his contract. He's got a $10.5 million base salary. So what that means is take 10.5, divide it by 17. That's his game check for every single week. And you got to pay those game checks for the remaining weeks in the season. So it's not going to be complete $10.5 million, but the Browns have plenty of money anyway. Now, he turns 30 years old in January, so we know that even for a running back, he has far exceeded most running backs' age expectations. And, of course, it's King Henry. He's a 2-time NFL rushing leader. He's a top 3 running back in the last 20 years, without a doubt in my eyes. But Derrick Henry, the last couple of seasons, like coming down from that 2K year in 2020, look at the average. It goes from averaging 5.4 yards a pop, some Nick Chubb numbers, to averaging 4.4 yards a carry last year. And this year, we saw Derrick Henry against Cleveland. He was bottled up by this Browns defense. He did not look like a guy who was a 2-time NFL rushing leader. Now, if the Titans end up selling, I like the Henry route way more than the Jonathan Taylor route. It would cost you less. You could only be tied to him for the rest of this year, so you don't have to give him some big contract extension like you might have to do with Jonathan Taylor. And it opens up the possibility of Nick Chubb returning. And I still think Derrick Henry can be a really good player. Like, he has an awful-ish offensive line in Tennessee. If you get Derrick Henry behind the Browns' offensive line, you're going to get better results. And that could get the ground game right back on track. It would be so weird to think about just because Browns fans have been battling with Titans fans for so long over who's the better running back. And For Henry to come to Cleveland, it'd be weird to wrap my mind around, but once he rushes for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns, I think we can all get behind it pretty quickly. But pick a running back for me. Would you rather have Derrick Henry or Jonathan Taylor? Type the jersey number down below for the player you would rather have play for Cleveland if they had to make a trade this season. Let me know, 22 or 28. Trade idea number 4. Garrett Bowles comes from Denver in exchange for Jed Wills, a 3rd-round pick, but Cleveland also gets a 4th. So Bowles and a 4th to the Browns, Jed Wills and a 3rd to Denver. So the Browns get the better tackle, but Denver gets a better draft pick, and they get, a younger left tackle to kind of reset their offensive line a little bit and move off a pretty big contract in Garrett Bowles. Now, comparing these guys head-to-head, there is no comparison. Just going off this year alone, Garrett Bowles is miles ahead of Jedrick Wills. His PFF overall grade is 30 points higher. He's given up 6 pressures allowed. Meanwhile, Jed Wills has allowed 18. 1 sacks compared to 2. 3 penalties for Jed Wills. Garrett Bowles' biggest knock in his NFL career has been the penalties. He is the biggest victim of holding. But this year, he hasn't really had that issue so far. So if you remove the penalties from Garrett Bowles' game, he is a really good left tackle. Unfortunately, I've given up on Jed Wills. I went into the Ravens game as sort of my last straw with him, and I did not see anything that saw an improvement in his effort, in his overall play, run blocking, pass blocking. He's in year 4, and I think this is the worst he's looked so far. Like, of all of his 4 years with the Browns, I think this year has been the worst one yet. There is just nothing I've seen from Jed Wills that makes me believe that's a guy I want to give a second contract to. So, yes, I think people like me sometimes can probably come off too harsh on Jed Wills, but the facts are he hasn't looked like someone that you want to see holding down the left side of your offensive line and protecting Deshaun Watson's blind side for more than a play or 2 here and there throughout the season. So for that reason, I'd be very interested in swapping left tackles with the Broncos if I'm Cleveland. Trade idea number 5, Danielle Hunter for a 3rd-round pick. Now, the 3rd-round pick might not get it done, but you did see Andrew Berry just completely, highway robbery, trade rape Kwesi Adofo-Mensah for Zadarius Smith. So, Danielle Hunter for a 3rd. Listen, there has been some trade buzz regarding Danielle Hunter for the last couple of months. But then the Vikings and himself agreed to a new 1-year, $17 million contract with Minnesota. If the Vikings keep losing, Hunter is going to be the belle of the ball, right? Don't drop the soap. Don't drop the soap. I just think that Danielle Hunter is going to be the most prized target and candidate at the NFL trade deadline if he continues to put up the numbers he has put up so far. Look at his stats compared to the Browns' top 3 edge rushers. Could you imagine if all 4 of those guys were in brown and orange? 5 sacks, 6 sacks, 3 sacks. And Zadarius Smith, the sacks are going to start coming. He's got 13 pressures. Compared to Danielle Hunter, who's got 13 pressures, he's got 5 sacks. Zadarius Smith is just right there. I think this is like a foul ball home run that you just got to straighten out a little bit, but it's a long season. And once he starts straightening out, those, foul tips and whatnot, they're going to start turning into home runs. And the 2023 NFL sack leaders, right now, Myles Garrett and Danielle Hunter are numbers 4 and 5. If you got those 2 guys on the same team, and with Okoronkwo and Zadarius Smith coming in off the bench, that would be absolutely ridiculous. If Andrew Berry ultimately thinks the path to the Super Bowl is through the defense, and they just have to make the defense the greatest defense ever seen, then maybe he does kick the tires on Danielle Hunter. Maybe he does inquire and see what it would cost to get him, knowing, hey, we can have the 25th ranked offense, but if we have Danielle Hunter added to the number 1 defense, it doesn't matter how the offense plays. They just got to score 7 points, and we'll win 7-0 every single week. So if Andrew Berry thinks that is the blueprint for this team to be successful, maybe Danielle Hunter is someone he has on his radar. If he wants to invest his assets into the offense, which need it more, then Danielle Hunter is not your guy. But let's run through the 5 trades we talked about here, and let me know which trade you like the most. Is it the Jerry Jeudy trade? Could it be the Jonathan Taylor trade or the Derrick Henry trade? The offensive tackle swap between Cleveland and Denver, or the one we just talked about where Danielle Hunter comes over from Minnesota for a third-round pick. Of those 5 trades, let me know which one you like the most down in the comment section. If I'm picking one, the Jed Wills and Garrett Bowles trade might not look the most fun because it's not a skill position player, but that's going to be sneaky up there. If you could get Derrick Henry and get some good 10, 11, 12 games, not even 12, just 8 to 10 good games out of Derrick Henry, that would be sensational for this running back room, and that would be a huge pulse for this offense for the rest of the season.